Hi everybody, this is the original Josh, back with Kranzle USA, Pressure Washer Perfection. And today we're going to talk about how you're going to feed water to your pressure washer in our plumbing series. In this particular segment, we're going to focus on how you're going to run your Kranzle without having force-fed water supply. So if you're a mobile detailer or maybe an HVAC contractor and you need to go out and clean out in the field, but you're not going to have a garden hose to supply water, then we're going to have to use a tank. So there's some things that we want to discuss about how we set up the plumbing from your tank to your pressure washer so that you don't have any downtime. So the first question that comes across the line every time I talk to somebody on the phone about this is, what kind of pump do I use to push the water from my tank to my pressure washer? So here you will see a 12-volt pump. This is rated for 4 gallons per minute. You just hook it up to a battery, and then you don't use a pump to pump water from your tank to your pressure washer. And you might want to know why. Your Kranzle pressure washer has a self-priming pump. So as long as there's fluid in a line coming up to the pump and we're allowing water to be fed to it, it will draw water to itself. So because of that, we do not want a pump to feed water from the tank to the pressure washer, because in addition to just costing you more money and having another piece of equipment that you have to take care of, maintain, and worry about, supply pumps can actually create cavitation when feeding water to the pressure washer pump. So that means that if you're getting cavitation in the water going to the pump, you're not going to get any pressure out of your pressure washer, so you won't be cleaning and you certainly won't be doing anything nice to your pump. So if you're hooking up your pressure washer to your tank, don't use a pump. There is no reason to. So now we're going to move on to the hose. So right here you'll see my preferred style of supply hose. This is a non-collapsible hose, heavy duty. It's very much like radiator hose, you know, the heavy duty stuff you see under the hood of your car. This is not going to collapse in this environment, and it's even going to hold up to bending, and it's not going to kink. So you can see with this piece, bends pretty well, still no kinks. You're still going to have enough flow going to your pressure washer. I don't necessarily want to see you feed your pressure washer through a line that's bent like this, but it's not going to restrict flow if it happens to. The next step in setting up your pressure washer line, a lot of guys get really excited about setting up their pressure washer system and want to have every fancy gadget. You know, the more stainless steel, the better. And you know what comes in stainless steel? Garden hose quick disconnects. Well, I don't want to see you use those on your Kranzle pressure washer at all, but especially not on your tank setup. Those connections are sealed under positive pressure. This is not going to be a positive pressure environment, so this can just suck air in right between those connections if for some reason they're not sitting quite right. You know, it's been a bad day for those fittings. So avoid using garden hose quick disconnects, or actually let me say, using garden hose quick disconnects is prohibited for your water connection from your tank to your pressure washer. Next, while it's not always possible for every person's setup and the way that you're getting your parts, maybe your plumbing expertise just isn't quite there yet, these garden hose connections are acceptable ways to hook up your pressure washer to the hose. However, we want to avoid having them in multiple places. So as you can see, this hose comes over and connects to a hose barb and is then clamped. And on this side, we have actually factory crimped the end to the garden hose fitting. So on this side, if we were to install an adapter with male garden thread coming off the valve, you could technically use a hose with male and female connectors to run from the tank to the pressure washer. If you must do that, you can. However, do not put a 50-foot garden hose in between your tank and your pressure washer. And when possible, connect it with hose clamps at hose barbs as opposed to additional garden hose thread connections. Now, as I just mentioned, do not use a 50-foot garden hose between your tank and your pressure washer to feed it water. It's not going to suck it that far. You can glue a bunch of straws together, 50 straws together, and try to drink out of a soda cup, and it's just not going to happen. So don't make your pressure washer try to suck water from your tank all the way over to the pressure washer through 50 foot of garden hose. Instead, Anywhere possible, make your hose connections as short as they can be. In some cases, you might have to have it a little bit longer in case you gotta set a gas-powered machine, for instance, on the ground, something along those lines. But you always wanna make sure this line is no longer than is necessary. So now we are reaching the most important part of this video and one of my biggest pet peeves. When running from your tank to your pressure washer, the water line, just like your electrical circuit, needs to be completely dedicated to your pressure washer. Right here, you'll see, now this is just dry fitted, guys, I'm not quite that strong. This connection has a T with an extra valve. You guys are probably very familiar with this because this is how most people set up their system so that they can either drain their tank or fill their buckets. But anytime we have a branch in the line coming from the tank to the pressure washer, in order for this to continue to be able to self-prime like it is designed to do, this line has to be dedicated and a straight plumbing pathway. Any branches of this type, even if this valve is closed, is going to interfere with the fluid dynamics of feeding water to your pump. So anytime you have a problem with your pressure washer losing pressure, if your system is set up with one of these branches, I'm going to tell you to remove it, and I'll bet you once you do, you're gonna start getting your pressure washer to work exactly the way that you wanted it to. So your next question is, well, I have to fill buckets, I have to wash my hands, I have to empty the tank. How am I gonna go about doing that? It's very simple if you use the right parts. So, as you can see, this quote-unquote tank is just a glorified drum. We take and draw a hole with a hole saw and install a bulkhead fitting. These are available at dirtkiller.com and at most other plumbing retail supply houses. It's made out of poly. It's got a little rubber gasket. Once you drill your hole into the tank, you feed it down from the inside. It's a very tricky step, but that's why they pay me the big bucks. Feed it in from the inside. We tighten on our flange. And now we have a new connection to fill our bucket. So what you see here is two separate lines. And the beautiful part about this is that when you buy tanks that already have connections installed into them, they're not always where it's most convenient for your pressure washer or the layout of your system in your van or on your trailer. So find out where you're gonna place your pressure washer, find out where you're gonna place your tank, maybe use the factory supplied connection for your actual drain, and then install a new bulkhead fitting to run your line to your pressure washer where it can be out of the way. You won't have to worry about setting any buckets on your hose or any other pieces of equipment. Makes it look nice and tidy. And if you're a detailer, it's all about the details. When everything's nice and put away, it's easy to get to, makes you look very professional. So back to this real quick. As I mentioned, right here we have taken and made a new connection to hook into our tank for our dump line. So it's incredibly important that when you remove your branch, take this T out altogether and connect your valve directly into the bulkhead. Now, as you can probably tell here, we haven't installed an inlet filter or strainer between the tank and the pump. As always, if you're setting it up, don't forget that you have your strainer inside the inlet. If you're gonna set up on a tank and install a strainer, make sure you remove this so that it doesn't get overlooked. Now with the Kranzle pump, you have a couple options. We have this banjo filter, which is really nice, heavy duty. This is popular with professionals. You remove the cup to clean the screen, like so. And there's also a small pipe nipple that can be removed so that you can use this as a connection to blow out your water line and winterize it if you're cleaning through the winter time. More details about that are on one of our other videos for winterization. If you like to be able to see what's in the bowl, this is a nice bowl filter, but remember, if it's sitting like this, it's not helping you. If it's sitting like this, it's only 50% helping you. It's got to sit like this if it's really going to be useful, which means that you're going to forfeit some of the amount of water in your tank unless you elevate your tank so so that the filter can sit down below. You will have to remove this cup in order to clean out the strainer. Both of these strainers come with, can be ordered with a variety of different screen sizes. Your mesh size is kind of important as far as you don't want it to be too large for the type of particulate that's going through the filter, or the strainer, I should say. However, if it's too small, it can actually impede the flow going to your pump. So if you have a smaller pressure washer like this and you've got a tank that's 5 or 10 feet away, I would avoid using something that has too small of a mesh screen. So your last option is actually a Kranzle brand water strainer filter assembly. This can be installed over on this side of your water line if you remove this brass connection right here at the inlet. Now that's only possible with the 22 series machines from the past two years. You have to make sure that you have this male threaded connection coming off the pump. But if you do, you can unthread that, screw this in directly to the pressure washer, and it'll sit just like so, and you'll just move your garden hose connection further out. Now, one last time, want to emphasize, you've got to remove this T. But in doing so, if you've already set it up and you haven't put in a filter, when you remove your T, that'll give you enough room to implement a filter into your water system. So, now that we've talked about how that should all fit together, there's one last important thing that we need to discuss. This is garden hose thread. This is pipe thread. Garden hose thread is only one size in the United States, and that is given the designation of MGH or FGH, whether it be male or female. I think you can figure out which one's which. When you describe the sizes of your hose, you'll say 1/2 inch hose with the garden hose thread. I'll understand what that means. Or if you describe a fitting as being garden hose thread with 1/2 inch barb, I understand what that means. But this garden hose thread only comes in one size. This is national pipe thread, and that's 3/4 inch pipe thread. You can see how these threads, if you take a close enough look, you can see that the threads are tapered on the pipe thread. On the garden thread, they're not tapered, they're straight. This is as we discussed in another one of our videos. When you thread the garden hose into the fitting onto the pump, you're sealing against this flat surface. The threads aren't making the seal. So you can see if you compare the two, those two thread sizes do not match. The teeth are different. So even though our fittings are about the same diameter, they are not the same. In fact, on this fitting alone, we have garden thread on one side and female pipe or male pipe thread on the other side. So in spite of the fact that the two threads are very similar in size and appearance, when we put the garden hose thread in, makes a solid connection. It's not going to move. However, if I thread in the pipe thread to the garden hose fitting, it's still loose, and that's not fitting all the way up against the flange inside the connection. And sometimes if you force it, especially if these fittings are plastic, you may get a tight connection, but that will be the first place that leaks start when you drive your truck around the city and wash 100 cars and this machine runs for a couple hours. That's going to leak and you're going to lose pressure, and then you won't be able to make any money. So remember, when setting up your pressure washer, the plumbing coming from your tank to your feeding water from your tank to your pressure washer, it's very important how it gets set up. Follow all the tips. I'm not going to relist them all because it was a lot of them, I know. See in the comments below for additional videos from the plumbing tip series. And if you have any questions about what we showed you here that I didn't go over and discuss, please leave the comments below or call our office. So thank you for joining me, the original Josh, with Kranzle USA, Pressure Washer Perfection.
Kranzle USA, Pressure Washer